Okay, again, I want to thank everyone for joining today for our Wednesday afternoon sales sessions. As I said in the past, if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we can address them at the end. Today, we're going to talk about how to information gather at the first meeting. And in a nutshell, what we're doing is we're looking at however you set up the first meeting, from a prospecting standpoint, whether it is with a current client that maybe you're looking to cross sell with, or possibly a cold prospect that you've never spoken to before. What we want to look to do is go over what you do at that first meeting. Okay, that's the goal today. All right, so there are 4 different phases that we're going to cover today. Start building a relationship, find pain, give homework, and set the second meaning. Obviously, number 2 is going to be the part that we're probably going to spend the most time on today. So with that said, let's move on to start building a relationship. So and don't mind me, the first thing you want to do when you go to the first meeting is discover what their personality type is. And I remember when it used to be a lot easier before the pandemic, where I remember going into a prospect's office, and the first thing I would do would be to look around and discover if there were any pictures, if there were any family pictures on the desk, behind the desk, or whatever, because usually that indicated that you have a talker. Not always, and this is not really 100% ironclad, but we're talking generalization here. So there are 4 different personality types that have been identified out there, and we can do probably 2 or 3 sessions just on the personality types. I like to break them down to 2 types, the talkers and the non-talkers. The talkers are obviously the ones that you want to build rapport. Take a couple minutes, just having a conversation, see if you have any friends or family in common that each other know. That's the key. You want to build that rapport. With the non-talkers, it's a lot more difficult. So if we want to equate the different 4 different aspects that we have here, the socializer, that would be like us usually, the salesperson that have a gift for gab, so to speak. The supporter, I would equate the supporter to be more of like the social worker type, the ones that definitely do like to talk, but they're there to help people more than anything else. The non-talkers are very straightforward. Director would be like the CEO types, the ones that they don't want to have any sort of chit chat. Why are you there? What are you looking to accomplish? How can you help me? Let's move on. Let's get this going. And then the thinker, and these could be, in my opinion, the toughest people to work with. These are the engineer types, the ones that are very slow, methodical, have to look through everything before they would make a decision. They take a very long time to make a decision, but once they do make a decision, usually at that point, they're ready to move forward pretty quickly. So when you start that first meeting, you want to really ask them a couple of questions up front. First question is time consideration. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, how long do we have for our little conversation today? Because that sets the tone for everything else. What if they come back and say, well, we have 15 minutes? Obviously, you're not going to be able to get everything done that you're looking for. But if they come back and they say, oh, an hour, hour and a half, then you know you have time to be able to just find out all the different needs, what their challenge, what their pain is, and really put together some sort of plan for moving forward. So once you find out how much time you actually have, the next step is to ask the questions. And these are 2 questions that you should be asking every single prospect at the first meeting. And those questions are, and you may have heard me ask them to you guys when we have conversations. Ask the prospect, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, what are you looking to accomplish today? And then shut up. because at that point, they're going to let you know where this conversation should lead. They're going to let you know if you're talking about possibly a legacy for their kids, possibly running out of money, or possibly something to do with, college funding, healthcare costs, stuff like that. So ask them, what are you looking to accomplish today? And when they answer, they'll probably answer in a few sentences. And then from there, ask the second question. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because now they're going to go into a lot more detail. They know that you're just not saying that for the heck of it. You want to know what their feelings are. So ask those two questions every single new prospect that you meet with when you have that first meeting. Once they start talking, continually look to ask open-ended questions. Now, DMI does have a handout, and I can get those out to you with all different types of open-ended questions that you can ask. The key is you want to just ask a question and then shut up. The best advisors at the first meeting listen 8% and talk 20%. So that's the goal. The more they talk, the better it's going to be, one, from a relationship building standpoint, as well as what they're looking to accomplish. Again, there's a reason why you're there. And what I would also say is listen for pain words. And I have 8 pain words. Obviously, there are tons more, but there are 8 main pain words that I want you to listen for if they say. There's mad, frustrated, worried, upset, excited, tired, anxious, and concerned. I'll go through those really quickly again. Mad, frustrated, worried, upset, excited, tired, anxious, concerned. Listen for those pain words. And like I said, obviously there are other pain words there, but those are the 8 that I always try to look for. Because what you want to do is you want to identify 3 to 5 pains that they have. If it ends up being less than that, well, that's fine. If you can only find 1 or 2 pains, that's fine. But again, like I said, there's a reason why you're sitting down with them, and you need to discover the real reason, not just they come up. Usually the first thing they'll say is not really the true pain that they have. So keep digging, keep finding out why you're there. They have a challenge, they have a pain. And like I said, number 5, no pain, no help, no client. If you can't locate a pain and the real reason why you're sitting down with them, you can't help them. And if you can't help them, I can pretty much guarantee they're not going to become a client of yours. So I can't stress enough, find out what their challenge is, what their pain is. And there's usually multiple ones. And people like to say, there are motives, there are reasoning why people are motivated to do things. People like to say fear or greed. I like to use pain or pleasure. They won't do something, or they will do something because it could cause pain now or pain later, or possibly pleasure now or pleasure later. And again, if we want to go into more detail, we can have a one-off conversation at a later date. But again, ask open-ended questions. Listen, find the pain, because if you don't find the pain, you will not get the client. Now, once you identify the pain, then what you need to do, and this is getting more towards the second half of the first appointment, you want to make sure you review it with them. Go through the pain. Oh, and I'm going to use, for example, running out of money, because most baby boomers, whether it's retirees or pre-retirees, their biggest concern is living too long, so they run out of money. So review that. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I think through our conversation, we've identified that your biggest concern in retirement is running out of money. Identify the cost to that. If you end up, If the market has a big downturn and you lose 30 or 40% of your money, it will exponentially increase your chances of running out of money. And what will happen if you do run out of money? Will you have to go live with the kids or go on Medicaid or something like that? Make sure you identify the cost of the pain and then validate their understanding of the pain. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, do you understand what we're looking to accomplish here? We want to make sure that you do not run out of money, that you will have money for as long as you live, whether that's for the next 5 years or if you live to 110 years old, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Do you understand what we're looking to accomplish? And then from there, get their verbal commitment that you're going to work together. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, what I want to do is work with you using your numbers to figure out how we can make sure that you will not run out of money. Because if you get that verbal commitment from them, then you're more than halfway there. And the goal is to find the pain and come up with a remedy to be able to get rid of the pain or mitigate it as much as possible. So now what have we done? We've identified the pain. We've identified the cost of the pain, made sure that they understood what the pain is, and they've agreed that you're going to work together to take care of that pain. So at that point, where do? We give them homework. This is an elementary school, but you know what? That's okay. So again, at this point, what you're doing is you're starting to wrap up that first appointment. And again, reiterating, so we've agreed we're going to work together to alleviate or mitigate that pain. So what I have, Mr. Client, is I have a couple handouts that I want to give to you that I want you to take, read through, and do what it says on there. The first handout, and I have all these handouts that I can send to you. Actually, our marketing department is just finishing printing them up so they look real nice to hand to a client. First one is pertinent paperwork. There's a form that you can hand to them that asks them to get together as many, if not all, of the items on here. That could be bank statements, it could be 401k statements, mortgages, stuff like that. Mr. and Mrs. Client, make copies or, give them to me. I'll make a copy and get it back to you because you need to figure out what you have to work with. The second handout for them is an asset worksheet. That's where they go through all the information of how much they have in their savings account, how much they're bringing in from a salary or a pension or Social Security, something like that. Hand that to them to fill out. And then the third one, and this one I think is the most important, especially for those who their main pain is running out of money in retirement, is an expense worksheet. You hand this to them and go through how it works. You've probably seen an expense worksheet before. This one that we have breaks down a client's expenses into two categories: essential expenses and discretionary expenses. Essential expenses, and this is what you're going to tell Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Essential expenses are those expenses that you will never run out as long as you're alive. Electricity, phone bill, heating, something like that. Then you have the other expenses, the discretionary expenses. Those are the expenses like going out to dinner 3 times a week, taking a long vacation a couple times a year, possibly that club membership. What you need to understand is, though, different people will categorize different expenses in one of those two. And I love to use the example of the club or the golf membership. For some prospects, a club membership would fall under essential expenses. They got to have it. With some of the prospects, it will fall under discretionary expenses. Well, if I have to cancel that, so be it. I do enjoy it, but I understand if I have to cancel. So again, what I want you to do is have the 3 handouts, give all those 3 handouts to the client, explain each one of them. You have to get them on board. which is why number 5, reiterate the importance of the homework. Mr. Client, we've identified that your biggest concern is running out of money. And we've also agreed that we're going to work together to mitigate that pain. Well, this is the first start, Mr. Client, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. I need for you guys to fill out and collect all the information that I'm giving you in these 3 handouts. And once you get their verbal and the head nod commitment from there, you can move on to the next step. And again, we're pretty much at the end here, but the next step is setting the second meeting. It's very easy to say, Mrs. Jones, or Mr. and Mrs. Jones, can we get together at this same time a week from now? There's a very good chance they're going to say that would work for us. The key is you need to make it no more than 10 days, but you need to give them enough time to find all those statements, to fill out the 2 worksheets that you've given them. So that's why I like 7 days is a really good time to basically say, can we do this at the same time next week? Because remember, if you wait too long, out of sight, out of mind. If you say, hey, let's get together 3 weeks from now, what will most likely happen is those 3 handouts that you gave them, it's just going to go on the pile on the kitchen table or something. Maybe they'll remember a couple days, or maybe the morning of the appointment, they'll remember to find that and scramble to find everything or fill it out, but they won't be taking their time and really thinking about it. So that's why I say, always try to do it same time 1 week later. Next one is, you also, before you leave, try to identify or agree to what the expectations are for that second appointment or second meeting. Again, let's review the pain. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, your biggest concern in retirement is running out of money. To take care or mitigate that pain, what I need for you to do is fill out this paperwork and find those statements. Then remember the question we asked at the beginning, the first question, what are you looking to accomplish at the meeting tonight? I want you to ask that question again, but phrase it for the second meeting. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, let me ask you this before we wrap up the meeting. For next week, what are you looking to accomplish at that meeting? And then again, shut up, just listen, because they're going to give you a really good idea. Most likely it's going to be something like, well, we want to find out more from you, different ideas on how we can make sure that we don't run out of money. And again, it will set up the second meeting. It'll reiterate what their pain is, and it'll also reiterate the importance of doing the homework. Review the goals after you ask that question. Review the goals for the second meeting. So, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, when I show up next week, I'm going to collect the different statements. We're going to go over, again, your asset worksheet that I handed out, as well as the expense worksheet that I handed out. I want to make sure that you understood what you were filling out. And at that point, you ask them, are there any other questions or concerns that you have before we wrap up this meeting? Maybe they may ask you a question or two, but most likely they're probably going to be excited. They've actually told you what their biggest pain or pains are. You've told them you're going to help them mitigate or lessen that. And then they have some homework that they have to do. So look at each first meeting as a couple different sections. What you want to do is you want to first discover their personality. If they are the salesperson or the social worker, you could end up being there for 2 or 3 hours. If they're the CEO or the engineer, this could be a 20 to 30-minute appointment. But you need to know that going in, because you don't want to keep asking, so, your son played softball. Tell me a little bit about that. You say that to the CEO and they're thinking, oh my God, let's move on with this. So again, build relationships, but you have to build it in a couple different ways depending on what their personality is. Remember, ask those open-ended questions, because no pain, no help, no client. Getting that homework completed is the key to everything. If you can get them to collect those statements and fill out those 2 worksheets, you're 75% of the way there. Then it's just a matter of finding out what the best road forward for them is. And because they've been open by filling out all that information, there's a really good chance they're going to walk down that road with you. Make sure you tee up that second meeting. What are you looking to accomplish at that second meeting? Review the goals, review everything with them. And then finally, and I can't stress this enough, make sure you leverage DMI. That's what we're here for. Whether it's, call us after the first meeting, go over how it went. A lot of you, I have weekly meetings set up where we go through how your different appointments went. That's so important. 1, to make sure to reiterate what you're doing. And 2, maybe if you forget something, we can help you tweak it. So just leverage DMI as much as you can. So again, what we went over today, and we're probably about 20, a little over 20 minutes into the presentation today, is that we went over what to do at the first meeting. All right, I appreciate everyone joining us today. Now we'll give a minute or 2, see if anyone has any questions or concerns that they want to review. While we're just waiting a second, I'll just give you a little tee up for next week. What we're looking to go over next week is sort of expand out. We're going to talk about that first conversation that you have with a client before even that first appointment or first meeting. And then we're going to take it farther. We're going to talk about the second meeting. What happens at the second meeting? So that's what we have in store for next Wednesday. I think this is a very important meeting to getting to the next step. Now we do have someone raise their hand, and let us see if I can bring you, Mr. Dandridge, in here. Let's see, promote you. Hopefully you'll show up. Hey, John, you're on mute right now.
Okay.
There we go. What's going on?
Yeah, my only concern, beautiful presentation, by the way, but my concern is that first step, trying to figure out what personality type they are.
Yep.
Is there some way not to get hung up on that issue, that part of the meeting? Because people can be evasive. They can, people can be shy away from you and want you to take the control.
Exactly. And you know what, John, that's a great question. I would say that, again, it's much more difficult in this virtual reality we're in right now, where you can't sit down at in their living room and look around and see. Yeah, just when you want to build a relationship, just start with a question. And depending on how they answer, you'll be able to find out if they're a talker or not a talker. Mm-hmm. If they answer it in a long-winded way, you know what, you go with it, run with that. The building relationship, it's more of an art form where I can't say that everything's different. Building rapport may take one question, or it could take 10 questions. Everyone's different. And that's what, each one of you have to figure out when you're sitting down with a client. But I like to start just asking them a personal question. And then from there, you'll sort of gain a little bit of insight of whether they're a talker or a non-talker. And then go from there. If they're a non-talker, if they're the CEO or engineer type, just run right into the questions. What are you looking to accomplish today, Mr. and Mrs. Jones? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? The building the rapport is definitely important, but when you have the non-talkers, it's not as important.
Okay.
So I'd leave that up to you guys. And we do have, look at that. Once one person comes in, More people show up. So let's see. From Susanna, I have had clients avoid the expense worksheet like the plague. It is sometimes easier to ask what is left over after their obligations have been paid. Great observation, Susanna. And that absolutely will happen. The key, I believe, is if you identify the pain enough, they'll be much more open to filling it out. Or you know what you can also do? How about you fill it out with them right there? If you have the talkers and you have the time, maybe you go through it with them right then and there. The key is with the expense worksheet, especially with the people that are worried about running out of money, is that we need to find out how much their expenses really are before we can come up with a solution to what that pain is. So I think if you, and I absolutely get that. When I was in distribution, in selling, I used to get that as well. I think a lot of the times, or at least in my time, I didn't dig deep enough for that pain. And that's why I say, listen for those pain words: the mad, frustrated, worry, upset, excited, anxious, concerned, tired. Listen for those words, because if you can identify what that real pain is and associate a cost to that, then I think you have a much better chance of them filling it out. Again, everyone's going to be different. It may not work, but we have to do what we can to help the client. Because remember, we're looking to help the client regardless of what they feel. Most of them don't know. They know on a very high level what their pain is, but they don't know how to fix it. And that's what our job is. Next question, Jim, are you saying we should have the client do the homework after the first meeting, then at the second we gather the homework and hopefully close at the third? Whew. I don't think I could have said it any better, Ross. In a perfect world, that would be how we would do it from meeting to meeting. First meeting, you identify the pain and you give them homework. Second meeting, you reiterate the pain and you collect the homework and go over it with them. The third meeting, you come up with what the solution to mitigate or lessen their pain is. Now, obviously, that is not going to be with everyone. This could be a 5, 6, 7 appointment close, so to speak. It could be a two appointment close. Everyone's different. But with this sort of turnkey type approach, this is what we're looking to get, because it makes the most sense and it's logical. Identify the pain, give them homework. Second meeting, collect the homework. Third meeting, show them a solution with what they have to do. And most of the time, it's just a matter of repositioning assets to take care of whatever their pain is. So another really good question. I appreciate it. If I did not answer your question to your satisfaction, feel free to get in touch with me and we can discuss more. So we went a minute over what we allotted time, which is absolutely fine. All good questions, and this is all good stuff. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight or to this afternoon. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself and or Amy.